Hi, welcome back to my channel. Antoinette here. I wanted to reply to the VR I've been invited to join in with by Clementia over at Clementia's Creative Cartomancy, and I will leave her link somewhere down below. And she has started the hashtag, or invited me to join in her hashtag, Ancestral Tarot Decks. So it is a VR invitation, so anyone can join in. And Clementia's she's actually gone into real depth about some of the decks that she uses. And if you can see there, this is the book that she's been working with in her video. So it's the Ancestral Tarot by Nancy Hendrickson. So she covers a bit about that and what she's been up to. She's also had her ancestral DNA typed and checked. So she does talk about that as well. And then she goes into great depth and detail with a lot of thinking behind how she selects her decks and the reasons why those decks to work with. Now, when she invited me to do this, I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to bring much more to this conversation because I don't work in the same way with decks, perhaps, as she does, but that doesn't mean I don't have anything to offer. So I've had to kind of think about it a little bit and see how I'm going to do this. Mine isn't going to be as structured as hers. It is simply that I have got some decks that I did buy, some with specific intention of use to lay down spreads if I wanted to get moon kind of phase spreads, or if I wanted to get advice from my ancestral family, my guides, my spirit guides, and people that I believe to be my past relatives that helped me through my day-to-day life. So I do have decks that I do that with, but less so in the formats in which Clementia does hers. So the first one I bought specifically in mind for this was the Bonestone and Earth Flesh Tarot, because it's such a grounded, spiritual-based deck. There is so much information in this guidebook that you can tap into to bring in other aspects of the meanings of the cards and the cards themselves, because they are so different at the time, were so different to anything I'd experienced, both in the art style, because I didn't have any Anaturian artwork, so the art style and their meanings, and the kind of stories that they all tap into, the deities that they tap into, the history of the deck. So there was so much in this, and this deck was specifically bought for that. So this was a specific deck for kind of spirit work. And when I say spirit, I'm using these words interchangeably. I mean my spirit family, okay? So the people that helped me. And I believe that most of those, and I've been kind of told as well by other mediums and spiritual people that can connect better than I can to spirits, that most of them actually are my family. So that is this deck, for no particular reason, just because it had that feeling, the feels really. So it just felt right. It felt like this was going to be the one that does that, because my, obviously family generational, so I'm going back lots of generations, so I wanted something that had that sort of feeling to it, really. Had lots of old style imagery, some very old lore, tradition, belief, and this was the one for me. Like your Baba Yagas, your crones, your wisdom, people that were going to come and depart wisdom on you, people with wrinkles on their faces who've lived life and not lived it through Botox, something real. That was what this one was for. So this was the one that I have and keep and use for a very specific type of reading. I then purchased this one, so the Guardian Tarot. Now this one was actually on a whim. I didn't expect it to be quite what it became, but this one actually turns out to be the one that gives the best readings for people who come and ask about their loved ones. So this again is a way of connecting to relatives, but not my relatives, so other people's relatives. So this is the one that I will use if somebody wants to know what their relatives want to depart on them. So it's the one that I will use with a very specific format to read for other people, alongside a couple of other decks to get the full kind of overarching feeling. So that's how I use the Guardian Tarot. And again, as you can see, the image is really very different because the spirits are the trees. So you have your guardians in the trees, And to me, that just instantly gives that kind of feeling of safety and being watched over by your family as well, and connecting back into the earth, the cycles of life. So that's what this one's for. Not specifically for me though. I use this, for me, this one works as an inner compass deck rather than a message deck for me. So I have that one. I then have a couple of oracles. No surprise. So we have the Seasons of the Witch, Samhain. This one I get, this one is like my multi-deck. I'll use it for most things. This is the newer deck, which I can use for most things, it turns out, like this one. But this is still my go-to deck, the Samhain version. And this one has a very ancestral feel to me. That's why this deck, it just has all those kind of feelings to me. It links me to the Celtic side of my family. It takes, and when I say Celtic spanned across most of Europe, okay? And I am family from Northern Europe, and I'm family from England, and I suppose then you could say Southern Europe, but Celtism originates and comes from across Europe. It's not specifically just parts of Great Britain, and that's what this is. So these images link into all of my family kind of ancestral life, home tradition, things they might have done, their laws. That's why this one. And I use this, like I say, as a general reader for most things, for finishing up readings, for a daily pull. What do my guides and my spirits want to tell me today? What do my ancestors want me to know? So yeah, this one I find really good for that sort of thing. The Seasons of the Witch Beltane edition, which I've spoke about many times as well. So this one, again, links into a lot of what I've just said about the Samhain version, but this is perhaps the summer month. So this, I could probably use this for 6 months of the year and that one for 6 months of the year. But this one definitely kind of April, Easter kind of time right through to September. This one seems to fit my needs or bill. And this one just goes through kind of telling me about things, traditions. It fits with the season here. It fits with the kind of bright summer nights that we have. So we have long days. The various traditions that are in this part of the country where I live that still go on and that I have grown up with. And of course, many of those traditions, again, carried across Europe as well. So yeah, so this one, for that reason, is the other oracle that I use specifically when needed. I also have this one, which is Soul Cards Oracle. When I bought this, it's kind of an experiment. I was wanting to try and tap into intuition. I wasn't sure how I was going to do this or how it was going to work for me. But this one is Soul Cards 1 by Deborah Croft Chapin. And what I find is I can just lay down the cards, and they all mean different things each time. I mean, there are still cards in this deck because, as you know, when you're pulling for yourself, you don't get to see all the cards. So there are still cards in this deck that I haven't actually really seen. And I'll just lay them out and I'll sit and think about what that means. Or, you know, I'd ask for the question, what can my ancestors tell me today? And then this is how I would get my message. And I'll just sit and ruminate on it. Now, I wouldn't answer this one fast. I would just leave this out then, perhaps on my, like in my reading space or my sacred space for days or weeks if I needed to, for as long as that message felt like I needed to continue hearing it or not forget it. And that is how I would be using this deck, which I think is an absolutely gorgeous deck. I really don't use this for many things. I don't use it every day. Sometimes I use it to close off a reading. I know some people use it to open a reading, but generally this one I think I do pull on if I want something more. That's amazing. If I want something more from what I'm not getting, say, from tarot, then this is where I'll come, because these do feel sort of like channeled images. They feel very spiritual to me. They just don't feel like they're coming from your average place. They feel like they're coming from another realm. That's perhaps why this deck. I just think it speaks volumes about what's going on, and it's very reflective. So that one is another deck that I will use. And as I've said, I don't generally, like, I'm not looking to go on like a big journey with ancestral path or relatives, if that makes sense. So if I do this now, I did start in 2022, however, following some people and doing some spreads, but not through books I had purchased specifically to do this with, okay? So I did use one called the Ancestral Path Tarot by Julie Kusha-Watts to do my New Year's spread. So this may be where it started for me, my curiosity this year. So I used this one to do this year. And then Elaine from Tarot Tats and Tea started doing, she's doing a series. So I think if I can find a series, I'll link the series down below. And I'm not sure if I used this deck or if I was using other decks. Many of them I haven't pulled out because I didn't actually write them down. So I've put here the Ancestral Tarot book, chapter 4. And this was one of the spreads she shared, was called One of My Many Patterns. And then she talked about how you do your patterns and you lay out your cards and you do it that way. So I've got my spread here and then I've got all my answers on my page. So she did a couple of spreads for us to either join in with or not join in with. Just covering up the pages that doesn't pertain to the spread. So we had the Communicating with Your Chosen Ancestors Guide. And I used, I've actually written the deck down here. So I used Ghosts and Spirits for this one, which I will show you in a minute. We had the Generation Pattern, which I've put here, and then I used a Triumphi deck there. We have another, that's a Simple Sundays. We have an Ancient Ones spread. So again, I've done my spread here, and again, these are all Tarot Tats and Tea, and I think they're spottable by the colour coordination. So I've got like black and the turquoise blue, which I was trying to do to keep things seeable. Have another one here, Ancestral Conversations, and I think that was one of the last ones that I did from what Elaine was sharing. I know I did do something as well by Jonathan Daly, but I can't find his spread, so I'm not sure where I put it at this point in time. Anyway, so those were some of the ancestral spreads that I did, and one other one that I've done specifically was this one, so Accepting Loss spread from 365 Days of Tarot, and that's quite obvious for the reasons why I've done it. And those are in my journals, which there's more about those in my flip through. So here's the 365 Days of Tarot by Sasha Graham, and the Accepting Loss spread is the 6th of September. So there's a spread for every day of the year in here, and then there's a big glossary at the back to help you find spreads that you might want to do throughout the year, and that's how I came across this one. So this one was actually, so on this day in 1997 was the day that Diana Spencer, Princess of Wales, was laid to rest in a public funeral at Westminster Abbey. And the summation of the spread: have you lost someone dear? Nothing prepares you for the loss of a loved one. While a tarot spread will not hold the answers, this spread sheds light and offers options when experiencing the heartbreak of your loss. So it's got some of the prompts. How can I face this loss? How do I let the pain come out? How can I share this, or who can I share this with? How can I relish the beauty of the natural world? How can I be gentle with myself? How can I allow myself the time that I need to heal? What mind or body activity can I perform with that offers me peace? Looking directly into this loss that I see, and then it gives you some cards for that. Can I find the gift and good of this situation? And what moves with me into the future from this loss? So that's the spread that I took from there. And there are a couple of spreads actually in the back for accepting loss or grieving, I believe. That'll be the page. There we go. So grief, sadness, and moving forwards. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 13 there. You have gods and goddesses. I'll just see if there is anything for ancestors. I don't know that there is. fairy tales. No, animals, cinema. And there's a list there. Spiritual spreads, so 397. There might be something in the spiritual spreads. So that's the book that it's probably the only big book I use for tarot stuff. I have the Ancestral Path deck, which I bought next on my journey of tarot decks to see about connecting to. Figuring it would just directly connect me to my ancestral path, actually, if I'm being very honest here, because it comes from around the world. So I thought it's got like some good vibes. It's around the world. There's lots of things in there that I like, things that call to me. The world of Egypt was always drawn and called to me, fascinated me. So has Greece, the Titans, the clashes of the Titans, the gods, primordial deity, all those things. So I thought that perhaps because this one kind of went around the world, it would maybe tap into a lot of that for me. What I found is, at this point in my journey, this deck doesn't connect me to my ancestors per se, but it does give some really nice readings in general, because the artwork's just, it's gorgeous. And the little white book is very good that goes with this. I would love to have had the companion book that goes with this to explain the stories behind, like the Sacred Circle stories and journeys. But sadly they're out of print. But this is the deck that I bought for a specific reason, and I don't use it for that specific reason. I use it for everything but the reason it was purchased for. Really interesting. Here we have the Ghosts and Spirits Tarot. So I have mentioned this one. This is one that I use for a couple of the spreads with Elaine. This is a very different looking deck. Can't explain it. Works really well for me. Gives me some good readings. I do use it alongside the book because the book has very different meanings to perhaps what we're used to the meanings being. And when that happens, that's when I'll use a book. It's not something I use for other people, to read for other people. This is just for me. This is messages from my ancestors in this deck for me. Messages from dead loved ones. So specifically people that I, like the message for when I lost my gran, I use this deck for that. I've used it for a couple of other ones. If there's anything that anyone wants me to know or needs me to know or is trying to give me in dreams that I'm not collecting or picking up, then I'll use it for that. So I'll only use it if I'm prompted. It's not like I just pop it out and start, making annoying drunk phone calls. That's the only way I can liken that. It's like somebody constantly bothering you with questions, when you're trying to have your dinner or watch your favourite soap. So this one has its own bag. It's one of the first ones to get its own bag, but it's a very special deck to me. Another oracle that I use is this one. So this is the Witch's Wisdom Oracle. Again, I don't think I'm going to need to explain why. It has a very deep connection here to me, the kind of area that I live in, my roots. It feels like it's very born of my ancestral roots as well. There's plenty here that I can tap into for me. Lots of magical symbols. Not just for my area, I think this one goes across the world, but it just feels very, very much what I need to know. So if I want to wrap up a reading, I want to know what an ancestor has for me, I'll pull this one out. So that's that one. Now then, one that surprised me, which I didn't realise I was using in such a way. So it is the Tau Remedies étrangers, if we said that right. And Mildred Payne. Now I talked about these two being a very surprise companion in my last video. This deck I think you can easily use for any ancestral work. It's very kind of dark imagery. It's got that death seance-y sort of feels to it. There's plenty going on here. but I found that the nature cards came out with the actual deck itself that I was using. This one. And just for reading, I found that, because I dropped them out for a weekly read, so my week ahead, wanted to know what my week ahead held. And when I put them down, actually, the reading that came through to me did not feel like my normal week ahead read. It actually felt like a message from somewhere else. And it took me a little while, you know, sitting on it and then leaving it out because I couldn't understand why I wanted to leave the reading out. And then I've kind of dawned on me that I was doing what I would do if I wanted an ancestral read, and I wanted to take my time understanding the cards. And for that reason, I realised that these two together make a great deck for reading kind of ancestral energy or connecting to my ancestors. So, and this deck has a real kind of earthy feel to it, beautiful images. I don't think I need to kind of probably go on too much about that, but you can see why maybe that one is a nice deck for connecting to your ancestors with. As I've said before, I cannot read the guidebook. The whole thing is in French. So this is that kind of gut feeling readings. So what else? Now then, I recently bought a deck. And this one, thinking exactly as it says on the front. This will also become a relatives tarot reading. And I also I bought it as well because I wanted to do the, as was explained. So the pictures are from dead people's relatives, so it has lots of old feelings to it. But this book doesn't tell you about the cards. It tells you how to do your tarot blueprint, how to get your kind of map for who you are and what your purpose is in life in this world. That was one of the main reasons I bought this deck. It's a beautiful deck. When I say new, it's like the last month really. And it's got these lovely backs, kind of old vintagey wallpaper. We've got gold sides, and then the images are kind of collagey art, which I didn't think I would enjoy very much, but actually I really do. But as you can see, there's like some very old photos donated from people who helped to create the tarot, the deck. And then we've got collaging onto it to add the kind of RWS stuff that we're aware of. And then we have these different numbers down the bottom explaining how to create your life paths and your kind of birth numbers and things. So these all relate to other things which are explained in the book. And it's those reasons that I like this deck as well. But it does have, because it has lots of old feels about the images, it does feel like you maybe could be sat down with somebody from 100 years ago to have a conversation. And just like finding out what they're up to. I mean, I don't even know where people got some of these pictures from of their relatives. They're amazing, absolutely amazing pictures. But it just makes you, it makes me giggle, you know. We're all so prudish sometimes about life, and then you see what these guys are up to in their pictures. I'm guessing some of their actual bits and bobs have been removed, but yeah, like what have they taken out of the picture to put those bits into? As I say, it just makes me chuckle. But I think you could have a really nice kind of cup of tea, slice of cake conversation with this deck. And I think it might help you to have the conversation with your relatives because of that. The fact that they are real people, they're real old photos. And each person in these photos has something to tell. They have a story to tell. But I haven't used this for reading normal readings yet, I don't think. I might have pulled it out for a couple of like daytime readings, but nothing major. Oh, somebody being airlifted to hospital. If you heard that one. So yeah, so we'll have to see with this one. Let's watch that space. And the other one I have, which I thought based on Clementia's reasonings for hers, would be that I could actually use the Universal Celtic Tarot for my readings because of everything I've already aforementioned in this video. But yeah, I could quite easily tap into the Universal Celtic Tarot, because this sort of straddles, as I've said before, the entire kind of Celtic history, although mostly based with kind of stories and deity of Ireland, I think, but for the rest of it, there's a lot of strong influence from the whole Celtic region that goes across to Bavaria. Still got a lot of Celtic traditions, symbols, and things that we do over here that happen in Bavaria. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, they still have things that they don't see as folk. Oh, they don't see it as pagan or Celtic per se. They just see it as tradition and their ways. So they have a lot of things that they do over there, which all links straight into everything that we do over here and our practices and, you know, kind of my current spiritual pathway. Right. So that was my take on how I use different tarots for different things for ancestral work, but not just for ancestral work in the way in which I think the question was posed. I hope that gives you all something else to think about and other ways to work with your ancestors too. Sorry if it rambled on for a bit too long, but I hope you enjoyed the decks, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Clementia, for showing us that, and I will also link Elaine's playlist, as I said, down below. Bye bye.